Operation Lifesaver began by a group of railroad employees in 1972 to bring awareness to the public crossings to the community. Illinois joined in 1976. How many of you have ever walked on a set of railroad tracks before? Any of you? And by walking on the railroad tracks, I mean along the ballast, along the railroad ties, or along the rails itself. Here you've got people walking on the tracks itself too. Here we are walking on the tracks again. How many of you have ever hunted on railroad tracks? How many of you have had their pictures taken on railroad tracks? I mean, they're very pretty. How many of you have seen your pictures on the railroad tracks? We've seen them all over Facebook. Family pictures? I mean, look, they're very pretty. How many of you taken the shortcut across railroad tracks? I did, growing up. Shortcuts again. How many of you rode ATVs on railroad tracks? No matter what sign you see, you're trespassing. Railroad property is private property. Even if there are no signs, you are still trespassing. It's against the law. You and your photographers are trespassing. No signs along the railroad tracks still indicates it's private property. Any idea where the state of Illinois and the state of Indiana ranks in all 50 states in railroad injuries, accidents, and even deaths? Does anybody want to make any guesses? Crossing collisions by state. This is where somebody was struck at that crossing and injured. Number 1 is the state of Texas with 251. Number 2 is the state of California with 172. The state of Illinois, we're in the top 5% with 121 collisions by state. Crossing fatalities by state. This is where someone was struck at that crossing and actually did not survive. Number 1 again is California with 48. Number 2 is Texas with 31. And the number 4 is Illinois with 21. We are now in the top 4%. Trespassing fatalities by state. This is those people that were taking pictures, doing shortcuts. Number 1 is the state of California with 236. Number 2 is the state of Texas with 100. Number 3 is the newcomer Florida with 72. Its top 5% again is Illinois with 50 trespassing fatalities last year. It happens every day. We see in the papers where people were struck, injured, or killed at the railroad crossings. Trains move in any direction, any time or day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They have no set schedule. As you can see, the approach of a railroad crossing, always expect a train. You pay attention to the warning signs and you look both directions before crossing. We have coal trains that come through, grain trains that come through, and we have freight trains that come through. And we also have the passenger trains that are coming through on the railroad crossings. Trains can't swerve. It's our responsibility to get out of the way of the train. Trains have no steering wheel, so they can't go left or right. It's our responsibility to get out of the way of that train. Is that smart? No. Approximate stopping distance. This is traveling at 55 miles per hour in a nice sunny day. How many of you were in a car today? It takes 200 feet for that car to stop. How many of you rode a school bus today? It takes 230 feet to stop. How many of you paired a semi? It takes that semi 300 feet to stop, which is the length of one football field. You got your passenger train, it takes 2 football fields to stop, which is 600 feet. This is your coal train, grain train, freight train that we've already discussed. It takes 5,280 feet to stop. How many miles is that? It's also 30 laps around your volleyball court for the volleyball girls, 18 football fields, 20 laps on the basketball courts, and 4 laps around the baseball softball field. Weight ratio. Remember 2 facts. Trains do not stop and they do not swerve. You got your 3,000-pound car against your 12-ounce Coke can. You got your 12 million pound rail train against your 3,000-pound car. It's a 4,000 to 1 weight ratio. This is what happens when the car runs over the can, and this is what happens when the car runs over the train runs over the car. A car crushing the can is the same as the train crushing a car. What would you do if you come stall on a set of railroad tracks? Number 1, the first thing you're going to do is get yourself out and get your passengers out. Number 2, you're going to get away from the tracks, even if you do not see a train. Number 3, you're going to locate the blue and white emergency notification sign, and then you're going to, if a train is approaching, you're going to run toward the train, but away from the tracks at a 45-degree angle. Why would you be running at a 45-degree angle It's because you don't want to be injured by the flying debris. And this is what the flying debris could look like, and that's why you're running away from the train. Now we have the ENS sign, which is the emergency notification sign. It acts as the address for all the crossings. All the railroads have the blue and white signs now. In case of emergency, you look for the sign and shows the emergency phone number. That's the phone number. You've got your crossing number, which is the DOT number, and you can call and let them know you have a problem at the crossing. The blue sign will be located on either the crossbucks or the signals post. If for some reason that this sign is not there, you can call 911 and let them know where you're at.
There's two different types of crossings that we will talk about today. The first type are passive crossings. The first thing you will see at a passive crossing is an advance warning sign. This warns drivers that railroad tracks are ahead. You also see pavement markings near the advance warning sign and a no passing zone within 100 feet of the approach to a railroad crossing. A passive crossing does not have flashing lights or automatic gates. The crossbuck sign required at all public railroad crossings means to yield to the right-of-way of the train. A painted line identifies a safe place to stop when a train is approaching. If there isn't a line, stop no closer than 15 feet and no further than 50 feet from the closest rail. Your active crossings have lights, gates, and bells. Flashing red lights warn of an approaching train and must be treated like a stop sign. At crossings with flashing lights and no gates, you must stop. Proceed only when safe to do so. Trains always have the right-of-way. If there are no yield or stop signs, yield to all approaching trains. If you do drive around the gate and the gates are down, 43% of people go around those gates. There is a minimum of $500 if you get caught doing that on your first offense. Flashing lights with gates means the road is closed temporarily when a train is approaching. Cross only when the gates are up completely and the lights have stopped flashing. Driving around lower gates is dangerous and illegal. Multiple tracks. Whenever you see multiple tracks, look for trains in both directions and either direction. Always make sure all tracks are clear before crossing any track. If there's a train in the crossing, after the train clears, make sure another train is not approaching on any other track from either direction. Quiet zones, located in different areas, can be quiet zones. What you will see is a sign like this. Some communities have established quiet zones where the train horns will not routinely sound. Look for no train horn signs that should be attached to the advance warning sign. And if you have any questions, you can go to the Federal Train Horn Rule in Quiet Zones. That website is www.fra.dot.gov. The three don'ts. Don't pass on the tracks. Don't shift gears while crossing the tracks. Don't stop on the tracks. It is illegal. When you stop, make sure the front and the back of your vehicle are 15 feet from the nearest rail. Where to stop at a crossing. Make sure, whether you are in a passive crossing or an active crossing, that you stop behind the white painted lines. If there is no line, make sure you're at least 15 feet from the closest rail. Don't stop on the tracks. Always allow plenty of room, even if a train is not in sight. Trains that overhang the track. Trains will always overhang the track by at least 3 feet. There are some special cases where they can apply for permits and to be over 6 feet on each side. Video cameras are equipped to most locomotives. Are you standing or parked too close? That's the question you have to ask yourself when you're next to railroad tracks. Distractions, we see them every day. People talking on cell phones, putting on makeup, tired, eating their meals. Multitasking behind the wheel can be dangerous and even deadly. Avoid driving when tired or drinking alcohol or taking medications. And when approaching railroad tracks, keep your full attention on the road and your surroundings. Trespassing is dangerous and it is illegal. Railroad property is private property. Being on railroad tracks on property, even without permission, is trespassing, even if a sign is not posted. Taking a shortcut across the tracks can get you seriously injured or killed. Recreational activities do not mix with railroad tracks. You are trespassing. Listening to your music near railroad tracks may prevent you from hearing the train horn. Train crews are not expecting people on or near the tracks. Placing objects on the rails is illegal. It is also potentially deadly. Throwing objects at trains is against the law. Any object thrown at a moving train can bounce back with deadly force. Railroad bridges, tunnels, and trestles are private property. Enter and you are trespassing. If you are trespassing on a bridge with a train approaching, you have two choices: jump or get hit. Tunnels, bridges, and trestles are only designed for trains. There is not enough room for a person and a train at the same time. Bridges have no room for you and the train. Trains can move without warning. Do not play on rail cars. When the train starts to move, the rail cars often jerk with enough force to knock you off. Don't stand too close to the tracks. Overhanging equipment can hit you, causing serious injury or death. Don't crawl under rail cars. Trains move without warning. You can lose an arm, a leg, or even worse. Train and car collisions. Two construction workers were late for work. They approached a properly operating railroad crossing with the gates down. After waiting for the train to pass, they drove around the lowered crossing gates, thinking it was safe. They were struck by an oncoming train on the other track. Never drive around lowered gates. As you can see in this picture, the car and the train are nowhere near a crossing. That car was dragged by that train, however far it took to get stopped. Remember to look, listen, and live. Look both ways. Listen for the sound of a train. If you look and listen, you will live. My name is Chris Esche. I want to talk to you guys about what I do at Evansville Western Railway. I am the Supervisor of Safety and Training for Evansville Western Railway. My role is I do all the training for all the engineers, conductors. I also respond to all the incidents that we have. So if there's a crossing incident, I have to go there, investigate what happened, and also take any kind of paperwork that may need to be done. I also have a story for you guys. Like I said, I work for Evansville Western. I've been with them since 2007. In 2009, I was working as a conductor and in our yard, and a train actually ran over my leg, and I just kind of want to talk to you guys about that. It can happen to anybody. I tell everybody on the worst day of my life, the best possible thing happened, and that was I lost my leg. When you talk about dealing with trains, usually the outcome's a lot worse than losing a leg. You usually hear people losing their life. Make sure that you guys aren't trespassing near the tracks. When you guys are in a vehicle, that you're looking both directions, and that we're not around any trains at any time. Look, listen, and live. Here's also some proof of what can happen when you do get around trains.